Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Mr. Foster. I am from Uplift Gratis, and I'm so excited to be able to teach you guys this week. All right, we're going to be covering four major topics. Okay, so we'll be able to answer these questions: one, where all energy from a food web is derived from; two, how producers obtain their food energy; three, where consumers and decomposers can get their food energy from; and finally, what the different types of things are that make up a food web. So we'll be able to cover all of those topics today. And if you haven't noticed already, our topic for this week is going to be food webs as a whole. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. Boom. Okay, so what would actually be a food web? Or what types of things will make up a food web? I want you to go ahead and just take a couple seconds and think about that. Okay, so if you said the types of things that we would see in a food web are going to be animals eating other animals and plants getting energy from the sun, then you would be correct. All right, so in all food webs, no matter what kind it is, all energy is transferred and derived from the sun. So all energy starts with the sun in a food web. Okay, as it transfers down, you can only use about 10% of that energy as it flows through. So the source of all energy on Earth is the sun. However, sunlight is not usable food for animals. It must first be changed into a usable form by plants. Animals not able to produce their own food are required to eat plants or other animals to gain their energy. Okay, so now go ahead and take a second and think, how can a plant get energy from the sun? How could a plant get food energy from the sun? What would that plant need to do? What type of process is this? What might that process be called? I wonder. Alright, so if you said that plants can get food energy through the process of photosynthesis, then you, my friend, would be correct. So pretty much what happens is this. The sun, boom, that's where it starts at, right? So all of our energy starts there. The sun is casting out those light rays. Plants drinking it up. What's happening is they use the sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to make glucose, which is a type of sugar that plants use for food. So when animals eat those plants now, the energy is stored in the plant and then it's transferred from the plant over to the animal. So first, we have the sun, shining down. Next, we have a little plant. Oh, that's some sunlight. Let me go ahead and drink that up. I'm gonna use that sunlight. I'm gonna use that carbon dioxide. I'm gonna use the water from the soil as well as some of those nutrients in the soil. And all of those things in order to make glucose, which is this plant food. Not only does it make glucose, but it also pushes off oxygen for us and other animals to breathe. All right. Now we're gonna take a quick little trip over to the park so that way I get to pick your brains. Here we go. So my question to you all is, what types of living organisms do you see, and what kind of things might live out in this area, and what would they need to eat in order to survive? What kind of food energy would they need in order to survive? I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. Once you have your answer, go ahead and type it in to the comments down below. All right. Whew. That's a really good walk at the park, right? So some of the things that I saw while I was out there were some living things like plants, saw some different bees, saw some squirrels. Some things that I could probably guess that also live there would be animals like birds, as well as different fish and things like that that were located over in the pond. Now my question to you would be, how do those other animals now get their food? If we know that plants get their food through the process called photosynthesis, where the sunlight beams down and then they store that energy, how then can other animals start to get their food energy? Okay, so we kind of talked about it a little bit. We know that other animals are going to have to consume other things, such as other plants or other animals. Hence, that's why they are called consumers. And since plants make their own food, they're called producers. That's right, they are called producers. So plants are labeled as producers because they create their own food through the use of the sun, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and water. And then they also give off oxygen, whereas animals are labeled as consumers because they have to eat something else in order for them to get their own food. You, my friend, are also a consumer because you're either eating other plants or you're eating animals, okay? It just depends on what you like to eat on your day-to-day basis, okay? So now that we have classified how plants get their food energy and how animals receive their food energy, there are a couple other things or questions that we still need to answer. So now we're going to go ahead and dive into those, okay? Okay, so we know that animals are consumers while plants are producers. So it starts with the sun, goes down to our plants, and then it goes over to our consumers. But what types of consumers are there, okay? So first, we have those things, or those first animals, or those first consumers, or those primary consumers that are going to eat plants. Their diet is made mostly of plants, and those are called herbivores. That's correct. So animals that have a diet mostly composed of plant-like material are going to be called herbivores. All right. Next in our food web is going to be an animal that's going to eat both plant material as well as other animals, and those are called omnivores. That's right. So that means they're going to eat both. Okay, they're going to eat both plants as well as other animals. All right, and then finally, the animal or consumer that's going to eat a majority of other animals and things like that are called carnivores. That's correct. They're called carnivores, okay? So their diet is going to consist mostly of different meats and other animals, things of that nature. Most people on Earth are omnivores, all right? We eat both. We'll eat both plants and meat. Oftentimes, you might hear your mom or your dad, granny, auntie, uncle, whomever might say, hey, make sure you eat all your vegetables before you try and go get some ice cream, okay? It's because we eat both. Clean your plate before you try and go eat your desserts, all right? We eat both meat and plant material, okay? Now, there is another type that fits into our food web, and it's gonna break down dead waste material. Does anyone know what that one there is called? What is that consumer called? A decomposer, that's right. So it's gonna break down all those dead materials, such as like old logs or rotting carcasses, things like that. And some examples of those are gonna be like mushrooms, different fungal bacteria, and fungus in general. Now I want you to come up with an example. A primary consumer, or the thing that's gonna eat the plants, also known as a herbivore, and a secondary consumer, also known as a omnivore, which is going to eat plants and animals, and then as well as a top consumer, all right, which is going to be a carnivore. Think of an example of an herbivore, an example of an omnivore, an example of a carnivore, all right? 3 examples. Example of a herbivore, omnivore, carnivore. Once you have it, go ahead and comment them down below with the label and tell me what they might eat. All right, guys. So we have went over what types of things we'll see in a food web, and just to kind of reiterate that, we will have our sun, which all energy is derived from. That's where it starts at. Next, we will have our producers, which take energy from the sun. Then we'll have our consumers, which can eat either plant material, animal material, or a mixture of the two. Finally, we'll have our decomposers, which are going to break down any dying or decaying material and pretty much return those nutrients and waste materials back into the earth. All right. So in order to ensure a successful interactive ecosystem, there must be a proper balance in the populations of organisms within a food web. What does that mean? Go ahead, take a moment to yourself. See if you can put that in your own words. I'll say it one more time to reiterate the point I'm trying to get across. In order to ensure a successful interactive ecosystem, there must be a proper balance in the populations of organisms within a food web. What could that possibly mean? Okay, so basically, if you said that that means that there needs to be a balance among the different living organisms in a food web, you are correct. So you don't want to have too many of one type of animal and not enough of another type of animal. There has to be a balance throughout. So for example, let's say that we were in a forest, and in this forest, there were approximately 1,000 bears, but there were only 20 deer. Okay, so granted, there are other things that the bears can eat, but let's say that their main food source is the deer. If there's only 20 deers, but there's 1,000 bears, well, there's not going to be enough food for all of those bears to eat, which is going to cause them to eventually begin to die off. All right, so you have to have a balance, otherwise your ecosystem isn't going to have enough food supply for other animals throughout. All right, you could also think of it as, let's say there were 3,000 deer, right? But there were only 20 or so bushes that the deer could eat off of. Well, now all of those deer that are eating those bushes are going to starve, because eventually that food source or those bushes are going to get all eaten up by the deer, right? Now, whatever eats the deer, once the deer die off, it will die off as well, because now it has no deer to eat, okay? And the cycle will continue. So it's very important in order for there to be a balance in an ecosystem, all right? So any change in the population of any organism in a food web or food chain will affect other organisms. So if all the grass in an area were killed in a wildfire, there would be way less grass for the deer to eat, and they could die off. If there were not enough deer to eat, then the predators, such as coyotes or bears, like how we were saying before, would die off. If any population of organisms changes in some way, either increasing, which is going up, or decreasing, becoming less, it will affect other organisms in the food web. Ultimately, decomposers, through their chemical breakdown of the remains of dead plants and animals, return the nutrients in those decaying bodies back into the soil. This decaying material becomes soil humus, or almost like a soil dip for the plants and things like that, which is a rich organic material that's a plant growth, and the food web continues. So food webs work in a full cycle. All right, it's not like a food chain where it's just a singular line. They're different because they can have multiple parts. For example, if you have grass, trees, and bushes in one food web, then now all three of those organisms are getting energy from the sun rather than just one getting energy from the sun. All right, what do you think would happen to the coyotes or carnivore population if wildfires killed off the grass that the deer or the herbivores would eat? What do you think will happen in this diagram here if the grass was to catch on fire? That's right. Now you have an imbalance in your food web, which is going to affect the other animals and organisms in that food web. Okay, so glad you all joined me today. To wrap up, pretty much remember this. These are the important things, or the questions that we wanted to answer are this. 1, all energy derives from the sun. That's right. All energy in the food web derives from the sun. Okay. Key concept number 2, producers or plants use the sun's energy in order to make their own food through a special process called photosynthesis. They take in that sunlight, okay, taking the nutrients from the soil, the water, taking in some carbon dioxide, create glucose, all right? And then after they create that glucose, they're able to use it as plant energy, food energy, and they also give us oxygen to breathe, okay? Third thing, consumers and decomposers get their energy from producers or other consumers. So your decomposers, your carnivores, and your omnivores are going to get their energy by eating other things, all right? By eating other living organisms. Just like you, you're an omnivore. You're eating all these plants and meat-like materials. You are able to get your energy through those. And last but not least, what we just were talking about, the different parts of a food web are producers, consumers, and decomposers, all right? All your plants are going to be producers. We have different categories of consumers, such as herbivores, omnivores, carnivores. Herbivores eat plants. Omnivores eat plants and meat. Carnivores are meat eaters. And then lastly, what makes up a food web are going to be our decomposers, which is going to break down the decaying material, all right? Decomposers are like consumers. They are a type of consumer, but they're special because they break down dead material, returning it to the soil so that way plants can have nutrients for growth. I will see you all on Thursday. So glad you tuned in today. I'm going to end out by saying I have a competition and I need your help. I need for you to give me the most views on these videos. Please continue to tune in and check out what we have for science. If I get the most views, I'm competing with another teacher at my school, a guy named Mr. Robbins. Great teacher, wonderful guy. If I win, you guys will see me with bright blonde hair like a Super Saiyan. All right, I will see you all later. Have a great day. Peace.